While the most routine tests and interventions are in the first and the last trimesters of your pregnancy, the second also has a couple. Besides, the second trimester is called the honeymoon phase of the pregnancy, which makes it the ideal time for you to be preparing for a low intervention third trimester and birth and postpartum recovery as well. Hello, lovely. My name is Inge Fleursprey and I'm a fertility homeopath. I help couples worldwide to fall pregnant naturally through the information on this channel as well as in my DIY and live programs. You are now watching part 2 of my low intervention pregnancy series. In this video, we're focusing on the second trimester. But if you've missed the first trimester video, I highly recommend that you check that one out as well. Just like in the first video, I will tell you exactly what I did on my second trimester to keep it low intervention, as well as share a couple of things that I suggest to my patients in addition. Because I'm sharing a ton of resources and suggestions, I don't want you to have to scribble along as I speak. So there is a downloadable guide that you will find underneath this video. It's your low intervention pregnancy essentials resource guide. Yeah, because I couldn't come up with a better name. But you know what it's about, and it will be ideal as a reference after you've watched this video. The first thing I didn't do is an anatomy scan. I didn't do it with Noah, I didn't do it with Lily Rose, and I didn't do it this time either. In the first trimester video, I talk extensively about ultrasound, so I recommend that you check out that video. But the fact that you're not doing any anatomy scans doesn't mean that you should just, well, I mean, you can do whatever you like, but for me, it was really important that I was still monitoring my pregnancy in a way that I felt like, yeah, I am sensible about this, and I am actually watching baby's development in a low intervention way and supporting my pregnancy holistically. So here are the things that I did do when I didn't do an anatomy scan or really any of the routine tests. One thing that was really important to me was to watch out for significant symptoms. Not that I was watching every symptom, because the reality is pregnancy does a lot of crazy stuff to you and there are a lot of uncomfortable things happening all the time. But there are a couple of symptoms that are wise to look out for. And for me, one of those was that in my second trimester, I started to get a lot of uncontrollable itching. And uncontrollable itching can be a sign of cholestasis, even though it can also just be a pregnancy symptom. Everything is changing so much, especially if it's around your belly. There are a couple of other symptoms that go with it. So if you do experience this kind of itching, it's worth to just have a little search or talk to your midwife about what the other signs are. But it was enough for me to decide to have a blood test run, and everything was fine. But if everything is not fine, if your liver values are elevated, then that is something that you're going to want to be monitoring. And as a homeopath, of course, I was going to then support my liver. I could have supported my liver. It would have been just, that supportive, but I didn't do that since there was no indication that it was my liver. I did use the remedy urticariurans, which I love because it helped me so much. It is a great remedy against any kind of skin itching, but in fact, it's also a milk supply remedy. Not that I needed it back then yet, but I will have it on my nightstand here for when baby's here. Another symptom I was having was repeated headaches, which is something that I don't tend to have in pregnancy. I do have it outside of pregnancies, but that was also a bit of like, meh, especially with Lily Rose and Noel. At the end, I was having preeclampsia symptoms, which is why I jump-started labor with homeopathic remedies. And so that made me decide to monitor my blood pressure. But if I didn't have any reasons to think blood pressure was elevated, I wouldn't have done that yet until later on in my third trimester. Blood pressure was fine though, so it was just monitoring. But it saved me another trip to the midwife as well, because I wasn't doing any ultrasounds or having the heartbeat checked by the midwife with Doppler. I did use my own stethoscope, and you can start using it, well, whenever you want to start searching for the heartbeat. But I started around 15 weeks because the first time that I heard it was with with Lily Rose at 16 weeks, which is exceptionally early. Usually with a stethoscope, you can expect to hear it around 24 weeks, but because I had the experience already, I started checking early. And I honestly don't remember when I heard it for the first time with this baby. I wrote it down somewhere. I think it was between the 18 and 20 week mark. I didn't do a lot with that information, but it's kind of cool to be able to hear the heartbeat. And whenever I would feel concerned, which was never, but if I would feel concerned about baby doing okay, I would be able to check the heartbeat. Actually, that's not true. During the itching phase, I did check the heartbeat a couple of times just to be like, is baby in stress or is baby okay? And then even though the midwife appointments didn't entail a whole lot apart from talking about the birth plan and talking about my personal circumstances and how I'm feeling, it was really helpful for me to have them check my belly. Even though I can check it myself, I can feel like baby is growing and the fundal height is right where it should be. It was just nice to have somebody else check that out for you and confirm that, especially somebody that is touching baby bellies all day and they know what they're talking about. Later on in pregnancy, even though I could feel the position of the baby as well, it was just really nice to have somebody confirm that. So that was actually my priority for the midwife appointments. Like, please check my belly. I can check my blood pressure. I'll check my nutrients if I need to, but please check my belly. And they were happy to do that. I was sick well into my third trimester, and I'm pretty certain that without my homeopathic remedies and the measures that I took, it would have become hyperemesis, ending up in hospital. So I'm grateful that I was able to manage it myself, but it was miserable. I'm not gonna lie. Because of that, it was difficult for me to get in the nutrients I would normally get, like with the Nourishing Traditions way of eating and supplementation, which made it more important for me to do some nutrient checks here and there. So I have done that. An important one for me was my omega fatty acids, iron, and vitamin D as well, just to make sure that, those levels were where they should be, or if they weren't, to increase my supplement dosages, which is what I've had to do. It gave me a lot of comfort as well to know that I was on the pregnancy tissue salt program, which is something that is also linked in the guide. They're free modules on my Growing Bump program, so I highly recommend those if you haven't got access to them yet. Because as I explained in my previous video, this program helps you to take up minerals from your diet when you are in a period where you need more minerals. So I knew that whatever I was eating, at least I was getting it from my food as efficiently as possible. So I had a couple of stretch marks from my previous two babies, but it wasn't too crazy. I feel like this time it got worse, which is weird, like, because everything was stretched. In order to kind of combat the stretch marks, I'm not sure how much it will help, but I feel like belly looks pretty okay. I've been using a combination of castor oil, calendula oil, and also magnesium. Not so much the magnesium for the stretch mark, the castor oil and the calendula oil most definitely, and keep things a little supple. But the magnesium oil was really to help me also relax. Your belly is one of the spots where magnesium is taken up really easily by your body through your skin, so it's a good spot to put some of that, as well as underneath the soles of your feet, actually. An important staple was, of course, my homeopathic remedies. I already mentioned urticarians, but I would treat myself with anything that was happening in the moment, whether it was the headaches or something else. So any kind of acute homeopathic remedies, but also tailored homeopathic remedies that just suit my constitution and the development of my baby. The second trimester is also perfect timing to start with your spinning babies exercises. It is all about making sure that your body is aligned properly. If your body is balanced, your pelvis is going to be balanced, which allows your baby to have the space that it needs to grow and move and to turn timely later on in pregnancy, to be engaged, and also for a much smoother birth and therefore smoother recovery. So the earlier you start, the better it is for your body, because you are building strength as well and stamina for your birth, but you're also making sure that your body is aligned. Sitting behind a desk, walking on heels, which I don't recommend when you're pregnant anyway. All of those things and stress, they don't support good alignment. So we're gonna have to work a little bit extra, and the spinning babies is the way to do it, 100%. It's also really helpful for pelvic pain, which I've been dealing with a lot. And speaking of which, homeopathic remedies and the pregnancy tissue salt program help with those issues as well. The second trimester is also a really good time to start planning ahead for the fourth trimester. The fourth trimester is after birth, because in that period you're just going to be really busy with baby and you're recovering. In the third trimester, maybe you don't feel so great. So in the third trimester, it's good to finalize a couple of things, but if you want to do things in a way that is as supportive as possible for your recovery and bonding and milk supply and baby's growth, then I recommend that you start in your second trimester to plan. Now, because this is already my third baby, I didn't have to purchase a whole lot of things. I just needed to take inventory of what I already had, cloth diaper wise, warmth care item wise. So we're talking our wool and silk clothing, our woolen blankies, etc., etc. I started working on my home birth kit as well to see, okay, what do I already have? And then what else do I need? And I started planning my postpartum meals, so that in the third trimester, all I really needed to do was execute. I didn't have to think. Third trimester, baby brain kicks in more and more and more, especially the closer you are to birth. So it's nice if like the previous you has done all the brain stuff, and then the current you in the third trimester can just do, just execute. If the newborn warmth care is new to you, then I do recommend that you check out the first trimester video, because it means you haven't watched it yet. And I will also talk about a bit more about this in the third trimester video. So here's what I advise to my patients in addition, because I keep my pregnancy super low intervention as it is. I wouldn't have mentioned these things if I'd only talk about my own pregnancy, because there are a couple of things that you are confronted with in your prenatal care with your midwife, and things that you have to decide on. And one of those is the glucose tolerance test. So how this works is you're given like a very sweet liquid drink, and then there are a couple of blood tests taken after that to see how your body responds to the glucose spike, and if your insulin goes up, and if your sugar then goes down, etc., etc. This is a dangerous test, people. There's no way around this. This is a dangerous test. And the odd thing is that it's mostly offered to pregnant women. If you want to check for gestational diabetes or gestational diabetes risk, I recommend just having some blood drawn and checking for HbA1c, because this is an average of a longer period of time of your blood sugar levels. You can imagine if you're taking a sugary drink, that is a huge, huge shock to your body. And when you're pregnant, you're going to respond to things differently as it is. So I believe that there is an overdiagnosing because of it. And if you are at risk of gestational diabetes, this is actually a dangerous thing to be doing, because your sugar spikes up immensely, and then what happens is it crashes. And if your blood sugar goes too low, that is very dangerous. So I don't recommend this test to anybody. And just remember that if you eat in a nourishing traditions way, this is going to protect you against gestational diabetes as much as possible as it is. And the pregnancy tissue salt program will support you in that too. Of course, it's good to have it monitored if you're concerned, or you can just decide to have a blood test run, a glucose, a blood prick test thingy if you're getting symptoms. Another thing that you'll be offered are flu shots and other vaccines in pregnancy. It's completely up to you what you do with that information, but I think you can guess what I do with it. Just make sure that you make an informed decision. I've got more information in the guide to lead you towards resources to make your decisions. And that's all I'm going to say about that topic. As you can tell from what I shared about my own second trimester with this baby, that the key to a low intervention pregnancy is that you tune into your body, that you don't just depend on routine tests that are done and either can check them off and then ignore everything else that's actually also important but not covered by the tests, but that you listen to your body, so that you watch out for unusual symptoms, that you watch out for itching, chronic headaches, the kind of pain that you can get here, which could be a sign of preeclampsia. that you do nutrient tests if you're feeling under the weather. Those are the things to be looking out for, because yes, a low intervention pregnancy is definitely possible and super helpful, but that doesn't mean you don't want to support your pregnancy and baby's development in the best way possible. And that is holistically and working in a way that it works with the development of your body and with your healing mechanism instead of against it. Just with anything that you're offered, just remember that you want to think ahead. What am I going to do with the outcome of this test? Am I going to use that information to find a holistic approach to support my body? Or am I just going to go down the rabbit hole of everything that is offered? Keep in mind, intervention leads into intervention. If you already know you're not going to do anything with the information that comes out of a test, then maybe not do the test and avoid the anxiety and the fear mongering, because sadly that just happens. For more information and resources around the routine interventions offered in the second trimester, go ahead and download that pregnancy guide down below, and that will take you to all the resources that you need. And if you want to dive a little bit deeper on informed decisions on certain tests and your alternatives in a holistic way, then you can check out my program, Growing Bump. As I said, the second trimester is perfect to be preparing for your third trimester and birth, and we already talked about spinning babies. But this is a great time to start drafting your birth plan. You don't have to have everything perfect, you don't have to know everything, but start drafting it, because it feels a little bit less daunting then, especially if it's your first birth and you're not sure what the routine interventions are, your options. This is a great time to just start jotting a few things down that you already have thought of in advance that you would love to have. Maybe it is a home birth, maybe it is a water birth, maybe you want certain people to be there, maybe you want to have a doula. Just start jotting down anything that comes to mind. And then there are a couple of things you want to start thinking about and researching. And let me just read them to you. I'll put them in the guide too. But there are a couple of interventions that you might encounter in a birth, and that is vitamin K injections, yes or no. Pitocin drips for induction of labor or labor augmentation. I'll talk more about that in the third trimester video. Membrane sweeps to induce labor. Continuous fetal monitoring during the birth. Routine IV fluids. Your epidural, of course, whether you want immediate cord clamping or delayed. Antibiotics and the Group B strep test, which is something I also don't recommend, but I'll talk about that in the third trimester video. And of course, the RhoGAM injection. If your blood type is Rh negative and your baby's is Rh positive, then this is something that will be offered to you. So it's good to be researching that, whether you want this at all. And yes, you can refuse it. You can. We also want to start drafting our first trimester, right? I already said that that is what I started to do. Here are a couple of things that you're going to want to start drafting ahead that you can execute in the third trimester. I already mentioned the postpartum meals, right? Look at Nourishing Tradition websites or books like by Sally Fallon. Look for a couple of recipes that you think would be great to have as freezer meals, or just jot down a couple of ideas that you have of very nourishing meals that you would like to have on hand in your freezer. I recommend that you make sure that there is breakfast and lunch for you for at least the first 2 weeks, and then dinners for you and maybe your family for at least the first 2 weeks as well. But if you can do longer, better. If this is your first baby, this is also a good time to start researching things around breastfeeding. La Lèche League is a great resource that is all about promoting breastfeeding, and it's just good to have a little bit of information ahead of time. For example, I often hear of women that say, oh, but my milk didn't come in. And I don't understand why they didn't have people around them to explain to them that initially you're not going to have milk. You're going to have colostrum, which is something very different. And then a lot of women quit breastfeeding because their milk didn't come in right away. But that can take a couple of days and is normal. Also, the success of breastfeeding depends a lot on the latch, and this is where your lactation consultant comes in, and may be worth checking out if there's a lactation consultant in your area that you can rely on in your postpartum period if necessary. And speaking of breastfeeding and food, go and find some nourishing foods to include in your postpartum meals that are known to support milk supply. One of the things that you don't want to have is oregano, which actually lowers milk supply. A great one is fennel, where a lot of discussion on it, but at least you can, have the vegetable fennel in your stews, for example. Oatmeal is a great one. Just make sure that you ferment it. And another thing that you want to do now is finalize your postpartum support network, whether that's your friends and family or a postpartum doula. This is the time to really start finalizing that. For more breastfeeding remedies, postpartum recovery remedies, and the newborn warmth care, I want to refer you to Growing Bump. And for now, don't forget to grab your low intervention pregnancy guide down below. And if you're interested in more natural pregnancy videos, click on the thumbnail on your screen right now. That should include the 3rd trimester video pretty quickly as well. But otherwise, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you're the first to hear when that video goes live. And in the meantime, see you in the next video. Bye!